crazy.
Will America respond to yesterday's deadly chemical attack in Syria? Today, President Trump addressed the atrocity at a news conference with Jordan's King Abdullah.
These heinous actions by the Assad regime cannot be tolerated. When you kill innocent children, innocent babies, little babies, with a chemical gas that is so lethal, people were shocked to hear what gas it was. That crosses many, many lines. I will tell you that attack on children yesterday had a big impact on me. Big impact. That was a horrible, horrible thing. It doesn't get any worse than that.
The images out of Syria are absolutely heart-wrenching. We must warn you that they are very disturbing. It was another suspected attack on civilians by President Bashar Assad's government. Mr. Trump says he has a responsibility to handle the ongoing crisis, but he will not publicly say how he will.
One of the things I think you've noticed about me is militarily, I don't like to say where I'm going and what I'm doing. And I watched past administrations say, we will attack at such and such a day, at such and such an hour. I'm not saying I'm doing anything one way or the other, but I'm certainly not going to be telling you.
Bob, let me start with you today to give us a little bit of history about how important the role of Jordan has been, in particular how vulnerable it is being on the border with Syria and having to take in all of those refugees, almost as many as their own native population.
Well, you know, Jordan is there are only two Arab countries that recognize Israel, one being Egypt and the other one being Jordan. Jordan came into alliance with Israel in the mid-'90s when Bill Clinton was president. But let's keep in mind that the West Bank that Israel now controls was Jordan. And they abdicated that land. They made a couple of big deals. But the problem for them is much bigger in Syria. And that's what they were worried about. And for the life of me, when the president says, you know, it's crossed the line, and we obviously know who he's referring to before, but it does sound like you're going to have to take some kind of action, which I think would be dangerous. Syria is just the wrong place for us to be.
Well, that was, you know, back in 2013 or 2012 when this was being discussed, and President Obama said that if Assad crossed the red line, then there would be consequences. And then Assad did that, and there were no consequences. You could point to that day as the one that led to all of the resulting growth of ISIS. So at that time, President Trump, who was then civilian Trump, said, President Obama, don't do it. But obviously things have changed. Now that you're a commander-in-chief, it looks a lot different.
Yeah, and I think if you listen to that press conference today, he said that himself. He said, look, I haven't seen it this way for a long time. He wasn't in favor of getting more aggressive with Bashar al-Assad in Syria until he saw the images of the children. You can see he was very emotionally moved by those images, as we all are. They're hard to watch. It's horrible what's going on there. But can I point out, and to his credit, he says, you know, I'm evolving on this. I see what's going on, the atrocities. By the way, you can do things that change your mind on certain actions that you're willing to take, and this may have been the one that changes President Trump's mind. But let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the Trump administration this week. This is a massive national security foreign policy week for the Trump administration. You had Egypt coming in, Bob, you pointed out Egypt coming in yesterday. You have Jordan coming in today. Jared Kushner goes to Iraq. China's coming in tomorrow. Syria, Trump, you know, moves his position on what he may or may not do without showing his hand. I think this is a big, important week in the Trump administration. And so far, you know, this may not shock anyone. I am very impressed with what I'm seeing.
Why?
Because I think they're addressing the problem. Like Syria is because remember, President Trump has a very tight rope walk to walk with. He wants to stay friendly and close with the Russians because, you know, this is the way it's been for a year and a half. He feels that President Obama failed in Syria, turned it over to the Russians, so he has a relationship that he wants to continue with the Russians. Yet the Russians are backing Syria. To this day, the Russians still say it looks like it was not Bashar al-Assad who killed the people. It looks like it was the rebel fighters who killed the people, which is contrary to what everyone else understands.
Because, Kimberly, everyone knows the rebel fighters weren't giving any equipment in order to carry out such an attack anyway.
Specific chemical attack, and this is why this has become so incredibly complicated with the passage of time, is because when you see these atrocities happening, and obviously, justifiably, the president is moved by them and upset by them, as he should be, we are left in a very difficult position now because it is going to be almost impossible for the U.S. to punish militarily Syria, because now, during this stretch of time, from when this situation first evolved, you have Iranian and Russian forces at all of the different military sites. So if we try to strike them in those spots, you're going to risk casualties in large numbers of Russians, of Iranians, which means then a direct military confrontation with those countries. Is the United States prepared to do that right now? I don't think so.
In addition, there could be other casualties, Greg, and that we know that ISIS tries to hide civilians and use them as human shields. What do you make of this, especially the entanglement that we have now in the last several years of having Russia try to do this work for us?
Yeah, is it too late? I mean, if you live in the woods and you come across a cub, if you let the cub live, sooner or later, you're going to face a bear. And that's what it is. You're literally facing the Russian bear, and you're facing a bear in terms of atrocities. You're staring at a region that is destroying itself. And it almost tells you that no matter what you do, it's not going to affect their direction, because they don't mind that they're destroying themselves. They're gassing children.
Right.
There are two terrible things about being president of the United States. Number one, the rest of the world. It's full of suffering, it's full of destruction, death, and false belief. The second terrible thing about being president are Americans who think we should be more like them. You know, it's amazing in the 21st century that thousands can still die, tens of thousands can still die in one part of the world, while the other part does Pilates and drinks lattes and listens to John Mayer and then tells us that we are the troubled country. We are the bad country. You look over at what's happening and be so happy and so lucky. It has nothing to do with God. You were lucky you were born in this country, because if you were born there, you'd be living in hell.
We could take it down that line, but let's go back to what Eric was saying here, and Kimberly. This week, if you think about it, North Korea launches a missile that may have gone off track, but it's not clear yet. And we do know it was smaller than the last one they did, but think about that. They made the decision to launch knowing full well that the head of China was coming here. Now, it's been assumed all along that China could tell North Korea what to do. I've never believed that. I think China is worried. Huh?
Of course they could.
No, I think what it is they're worried about huge numbers of refugees coming over from North Korea. But I don't think they can make them stop their nuclear
they can cut out. They can do whatever. China has complete and total control over North Korea.
Well, I don't agree with you on that. And also, if they
North
did,
Korea gets 100% of their energy from China.
But if that was the case, would somebody have said, don't do this missile launch the week that the?
Oh, I know. I think I agree with who was, I can't remember who was, John McCain for once. I agree with him. I think that guy and the chubby leader in North Korea is crazy. And yeah, I can see him trying to provoke some sort of fight between Donald Trump and President Xi in Washington next week. I can see that. Can I go back to Russia for 1 second? Maybe this is a good reason to be friendly with Russia. Maybe this is a good reason to have not burned that bridge walking into the White House, where you can say, if you really care about Syria and you really care about the children in Syria, you sit down with Putin and say, what are we going to do about this? You think it's the rebels. We think it's Bashar al-Assad. Let's get together as the two of the three predominant superpowers on the globe and fix the Syrian situation.
What did you think of Nikki Haley today? I mean, she faced the Russians. I mean, that's a serious cojones.
That she did, except for that last week, and this is not anything against her, is that we announced a new policy last week. That's what I mean.
That's why it was brave. But that's what I'm saying. What she did was actually brave, because she did it after Tillerson said it.
Okay, so then, and she said it last week too. Then what is our policy going forward, Kimberly? Like now they have to decide. Okay, so are we for Assad or not? Like, we're not for atrocities.
We're certainly not for atrocities. And here's the problem. Something has to be done about this. And by the way, something should have been done about it before, because unfortunately, President Obama and his administration spent the past 4 years drawing a red line that they did not intend to stand by and enforce and punish militarily Assad when they have the opportunity to hit his chemical sites. So instead now we're operating at a tactical disadvantage, at a political disadvantage. It's a far more complicated situation, because he was more concerned with getting Iran and the Ayatollah to be able to sign the nuclear agreement and convince them that it was to their advantage. And we missed this opportunity. So now what do we do?
Bob, can I ask you something about Susan Rice, who we're going to talk about on a different subject in a moment. In January of this year, she gave a press conference or a speech in which she said one of the accomplishments of the Obama administration was convincing Assad to give up his chemical weapons. And here we are on April 3rd of 2017, just 2.5 months after she said that, him using sarin gas, one of the most horrible gases against his own people.
Well, I mean, obviously, it was bad intelligence they were using, and they hadn't checked it out very carefully. And it's right; they never should have had the red line in the sand. But we have no reason to be in Syria. And the thing about Putin is, for Trump to sit there with Putin, Putin's lying. He's lying for Bashar. He's basically supporting a myth that this guy didn't do these atrocities. And you're going to sit down and say, okay, let's work this out?
But, Bob, but are you saying that we should do nothing?
I'd say, no, I think we should do something.
Like what? But like you said, we shouldn't be there.
I think there probably are some targets in Syria that will send a message. But the last thing we're going to do is get into cahoots with the Russians on Syria. So Syria is
we are in cahoots with them.
No, there is no other solution other than getting.
No, you can take out Assad. I mean, I'm sure we're capable of that.
Well, no, how?
I think
he's being protected by the Russians. I mean,
I think we have the intelligence to do it.
Also, it's also not legal.
There you go.
It's not legal,
it's not legal to do that.
There are ways to do legal and illegal things, and he should be knocked off.
Yeah, but there is no way to go into Syria and fix it without. First of all,
then how do you stabilize the region?
How do you do that?
This is terrible. I mean, it's going to sound horrible, especially with the pictures running every hour. But I don't think this is our fight. Wow. I just don't think this is our fight.
It's been 4,000 years.
The president does.
4,000
the president changed his mind. I think that's his point.
I don't agree with everything President Trump says.
No, I'm just saying that he agreed with that when he was not commander-in-chief. Now he is commander-in-chief, leader of the free world, and he has a different position.
Yeah, and you see the guy so emboldened with what he did. You can't be unmoved when you see these pictures of these atrocities and children suffocating to death and dying in the streets. The United States isn't a country that stands by and does nothing. We should have acted before. Shame on us. And now we have a new president. He's promised to do something about it. Let's see it.
But to put American troops and American blood and treasure in that place for 4,000 years, that part of the world.
Who is suggesting that? That's again the straw man.
If Donald Trump takes military action, and you have to assume from listening to that, what is the alternative? You're not going to cut off, medical supplies.
No, but there are operational, advantages that they can do, different covert operations, things that they can do. Yes, there are.
It is the worst ball of a bomb that's ready to go off for America. I would agree with. I don't know if you're on this page or not, Bob, but offer massive humanitarian aid. But don't offer any military or God forbid, our children, young people to go and die in that
100%. It's a sinkhole.
Can I add just from the press conference? I like that King Abdullah. I like him. No, I was like, he's
been
more,
an amazing ally.
Well, he's also more articulate than any of our American politicians.
No, but wouldn't you agree, Dan, one of our strongest and best allies for the United States? And
he deserves a lot more credit.
And a guy who's constantly under the gun all the time.
And has fought and flown combat missions.
That's another reason for us to stay involved, is to protect him, because ISIS and Al-Qaeda would like nothing more than to try to topple.
Yes, he helped with the U.S. Arab coalition, if you gentlemen are familiar with that.
Oh, yeah,
right.
No, hey, let's not. I'm not going to be in the camp that says I'm against helping Jordan. Good Lord, no, it's one of our strongest allies. I do remember.
Yeah, let's just move on. So